Today we're talking a little bit about your role specifically in the court sector, so we're going to touch on that. But what are some of the biggest things that you've learned now that you've been at Interprenet for 9 years and in the language service industry for that long?
There's a lot of demand for interpretation in the courts. I mean, it's a very pressing need.
In working with the courts across the U.S., do you think there are recurrent challenges that you see that each court faces individually, or is it more court or county specific that's subject to the environment?
Yeah, I think broadly the biggest challenge that we seem to confront, or maybe this is just because this is what we're poised to address, but it's accessibility. So it's having access to the languages needed for the cases that are ongoing. So specific counties might have specific languages that are more of a challenge, whether they have like a small community that's just popped up and they have cases going on, there's no interpreters around or what have you.
Or what I would call in the industry, languages of lesser diffusion. So if you have a big population of migrant workers that come in and maybe the predominant non-English languages are Spanish and Russian, but for example, you might get Kanjabal or Mam.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What are some of the languages of lesser diffusion you see local to the area in Chicago where we're headquartered?
Yeah, in Chicago, you get all sorts because Chicago is a huge hub for immigration. But even some that you'd be surprised by, just Russian and Ukrainian have been exploding over the last couple of years. And even though there is a good pool of interpreters, they just can't keep up with the demand. So that's one that's been a challenge this past year.
And I think it's just a matter of our environment. It's a matter of politics and immigration policy. I mean, it's a very big or deeper dive, I should say. But a lot of those factors play into language access and how the courts operate. So after COVID, I think we saw a great adaptation of technology within the courts. What's your takeaway on this shift and the effect that it's had on, one, the court system and how we support it from the language access perspective?
And that started during COVID, just a few months after the lockdown, that the courts started allowing Zoom calls or WebEx, but all these video platforms, they made that allowable to appear by video in the court. I don't know that was happening much at all prior to the pandemic, but that does really open up access to interpreters who would be much harder to get in person. And so they've seen the value in it, and they've kept doing it even after the pandemic has ended. There's no longer travel restrictions or health concerns to the degree there was during the pandemic.
And like you said, with the opening up of other languages, right? So it also eliminates a lot of the travel costs that we see.
You no longer need to pay $1,800 to fly a Vietnamese interpreter over from 2 states away to cover a 30-minute status hearing.
Do you think now, because we're seeing some courtrooms that are going back to strictly in person. I think people have a level of comfort and they like operating that way. But do you think the majority of the courtrooms that have enabled this technology are adopting this for a long-term use?
I think so. They really invested in putting in the right equipment in terms of cameras and microphones, getting this set up and establishing their protocols so that it is, they've got a good system for it. So it does seem like they're prepared for this to be a long-term part of the court proceeding.
But in terms of other adaptations that the court may be taking on, right, we're seeing a big buzz about AI, right? Appropriate AI usage within the court. Where do you see possible changes or adaptations of additional technology like that?
I know AI has come a long way in the last few years. I think it still has a long way to go before it can be reliably used for criminal proceedings, especially where accuracy is so important. I think AI does not come close to the accuracy and reliability of human interpreters who are trained and specialized in court interpretation.
When we're talking about the livelihood of someone, whether or not they go to jail or if they pay a large sum of money, right? We're talking about people's lives. I think it's really important that we continue to use best practices. But for AI, I like to talk about situational appropriateness, right? So a lot of courts, for example, might do something like an information kiosk using AI, like bots, right? So I'm seeing a lot of that. I didn't know if you had any insight onto that, but I agree with you. I think it's really important to make sure that we're continuing to use certified, approved, qualified human linguists, unless we get to some point where AI absolutely has no fallibility. But I think we have a long way to go.
And AI works best at repetitive tasks, where it can be trained on the thing and then there's very little variation.
Yeah.
So I could see how AI could start to be used for some of the preliminary steps in the court process when they have a status hearing or continuance where the judge has their paragraph or two that they're going to say that's pretty much the same every single time, regardless of the circumstances of the case. It's something where AI could step in and be a much more cost-effective way to have that interpreted for the defendant.
I hadn't thought about that. So I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute. But what are some of the largest or biggest challenges that you've helped courts overcome, either that you do on a daily basis for courts that we currently provide support for, or just one that comes to mind and where you helped support them for a big need?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had some of those big needs where we did need to fly in 2 or 3 or 4 interpreters to cover, a week or 2 week long trial. I think the recurring need on a daily basis is just the urgency. When a judge wants something, they usually want it now. We need a Spanish interpreter ASAP for this walk-in, or we need a Punjabi interpreter in 30 minutes, or a Kirundi interpreter for the 1 o'clock call. Like, there's a lot of urgency. And so we've really been able to build up our infrastructure to be able to accommodate those last-minute requests. So that's one of the big values that we try to bring to the courts.
Of course, not naming names or anything, but anything that comes to mind is like, whoa, we did it. Hey.
I think there was a language where we had not even worked with a court interpreter for that language before, and they called us up and we just started doing our research and reaching out to people, and we found somebody for the 1 o'clock Zoom call that we'd never even worked with them before, but we were able to find them and vet them and get them in there.
Technology does really allow us to do wonderful things and really with expediency. In terms of your perspective from the other side, from the language access side, with regards to how you support court personnel, what are some key takeaways or things that you might tell somebody that's just entering into the judicial system, like a court clerk or a support staff person, a court administrator? What are some things that you would want to share with them from your perspective?
Probably the biggest thing that's helpful for them to know is that interpreters don't grow on trees. For most of these languages, lesser diffusion, there's only a couple dozen trained interpreters for court in the whole country. And for some of the really rare languages, there's just 1 or 2 or 3 people covering the entire country's need for this language for their cases. So have patience if we can't find the interpreter that you need right away.
It might be subject to availability, right? I used to joke because I used to work in operations, and I would say they're not waiting in the back room. We don't have a warehouse of just interpreters waiting.
I'm sitting on shelves.
Do you have any funny stories or anything that have surprised you, or something maybe that's poignant in your 9 years of experience of working in Interprenet, either within the court system or just in general?
You see a lot of things happen when you're here for enough years. There was one very funny story from a few years back. This was before the pandemic. This was for a civil trial, actually, but an attorney called us up and he said, I need an Asian interpreter for a witness testimony for a trial that's coming up. And so I was trying to okay, well, Asia is a big place. Can we narrow that down? And so I was asking, well, specifically what language you're looking for. And he's like, oh, I'm not really sure. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll throw out some things and see if I can help him, jog his memory maybe. So I was like, are you looking for Mandarin Chinese or Korean, or are you looking for Hindi or another Indian language, Vietnamese or Arabic or Farsi? And he's like, I think Korean. And I'm like, okay, that's not very confident. So I'd say to him, well, why don't you talk to your client and ask them what language they speak and let us know, and then we can make sure we get the right one. Mm-hmm. He goes, oh, my client speaks English. He's like, yeah, but he can't make it to court. So we need his testimony read into the record. So we just need the interpreter to come and read something that's written in English. I'm like, so why do you need an interpreter for this? My client is Asian, and so we think it'd be more convincing to the jury if an Asian appearing person reads the testimony.
I won't ask whether or not you fulfilled it or not. Well, thank you very much for your time and your funny story, Don. I really appreciate it. We appreciate you and your team. You do such great work in supporting all the courts that we work with across the U.S. and all the other entities, right? We work with schools, we work with attorneys directly, across the board. So thank you very much for the work that you do to help enable that language access. Any other closing thoughts that you have?
So thank you so much, Kate. This has been great.
Well, I appreciate it. Have a great day.